Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 16th of January. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The terror alert level in Belgium is at its second highest today, following overnight raids there and a number of West European nations, including Germany and France. In Belgium's Verviers province of Liège, near the German border, 2 Islamic gunmen were killed after they opened fire at federal police with automatic weapons during a counter-terrorism operation. Authorities say that the 2 had just returned from Syria and were planning to launch imminent mass casualty attacks on police. Another suspect was wounded during the operation and has been taken into custody. 4 Kalashnikov rifles, bomb-making materials, and police clothing were found at the site. As part of a nationwide crackdown on Islamist networks, at least 13 additional suspects have also been arrested in dozens of other searches in Brussels and surrounding towns. Belgium is estimated to have the highest number of foreign fighters per capita in Europe to have joined Islamist forces fighting in Syria and Iraq. Just last May, a French national of Algerian descent, Mehdi Nemmouche, is believed to have murdered 4 people at the Jewish Museum in the Belgium capital after returning home from fighting with radical Muslim extremists in Syria for over a year. While Belgian police say that there is no evidence that the suspects killed in last night's raid were directly linked to the terrorists who carried out attacks in Paris last week, they say that they do believe that they were inspired by the murders of the 17 people in France. As a security precaution, several Jewish schools in Antwerp, Brussels, and the Netherlands were closed today after being informed by authorities that they could be potential targets of further terrorism.
The raid from the police on the terrorists leads some to believe that not all the jihadis have been caught, and those people that were not arrested by the police might still be on the loose, and as they feel hunted, they might try to strike a target. And obviously, one of the targets could be a Jewish school or a Jewish institution. That's why we have to protect ourselves.
During raids at 5 towns in the Paris region, 12 suspects were arrested by French police on suspicion that they may have provided logistical support to the terrorists who carried out the Paris attacks, including weapons or vehicles. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry today laid a wreath at the kosher supermarket, together with French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius, where Islamist extremist Mehdi Coulibaly took hostages and murdered 4 people exactly 1 week ago. Both men then observed a moment of silence in tribute to the victims. Kerry was in the French capital when a train station was evacuated for an hour due to a bomb threat, but was later reopened without incident. French officials say that 120,000 security forces have now been mobilized across the country and that its anti-terror campaign is ongoing. And meanwhile, elsewhere in Europe, 2 people were arrested in Germany, where security forces launched 11 separate raids on properties linked to radical Islamic Salafists. Spain, too, has now launched an investigation to ascertain if Islamist cells operating on its soil were involved in the Paris terrorism after it was discovered that Coulibaly visited Madrid just days before the attacks. Here at home, and turning to the upcoming elections, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that the gaping chasm between his Likud party and the Labour Hatnuah list rules out the possibility of forming a coalition government with them after the March 17th balloting. Netanyahu said that Likud's responsible and nationalist approach can simply not be reconciled with Labour's extreme left-wing and anti-Zionist platform, citing several members' statements as proof of his claims, including the call from MK Merav Michaeli, who said that mothers should not send their sons to serve in the IDF, the labeling of the Hatikva national anthem as racist in a book by MK Stav Shafir, as well as comments from new party candidates such as Professor Yossi Yona that he is unable to connect with the concept of Zionism, and Zuhair Balul, who sees his Palestinian identity as stronger than his Israeli identity. 3 parties unveiled their campaigns last night. Habayit Yehudi leader Naftali Bennett presented his party's list of candidates for the next Knesset, saying that the public has changed and wants more Judaism, more values, and more of the land of Israel out of a desire to return Jewish pride and to raise their heads. Addressing supporters at the event in Ramat Gan, Bennett promised that together they would bring the people to Habayit Yehudi. The economy minister then proceeded to launch a critique on several fronts, saying that the left is stuck in the 90s and that the Isaac Herzog-Tzipi Livni Zionist camp bloc repeats the same mantras without understanding that we're not getting anywhere. He added that in the past they wanted to make concessions for peace and spoke about a partner for peace, but always apologized, before reiterating his own campaign slogan that there should be no apologies for loving Israel or for being Jewish. Kulanu Party Chairman Moshe Kachlon has held his first major election campaign event last night at Kibbutz Givat Brenner. Presenting the top 11 slots on his faction slate, Kachlon offered the first serious glimpse at its election strategy. He said that Kulanu means all of us and that every aspect of the party's campaign emphasizes the boundary-straddling vision that the party has for itself. The ex-Likud Communications and Welfare Minister accused his former party of abandoning the social causes that had compelled him to join it in the first place. He said that the big parties, monopolies, and pressure groups want the public to believe that the election is between the left and the right because that serves their purposes, but it is instead between the leaders who care and those who do not. And the embattled Shas party also launched its election campaign with fierce attacks on Likud, Yesh Atid, and IBA over the plight of the nation's poor. Without announcing the list of candidates, Shas leader Aryeh Deri made an impassioned appeal to working-class voters, particularly in the country's periphery, saying that Shas will look out for them as no other party would, and that the war on poverty is just as important as the wars against Hamas, Iran, and the Islamic State. Saying that he and his family have experienced difficult times of late, Deri made a fleeting implicit reference to the video leaked recently of Rabbi Avadia Yosef, calling him an evil man for not listening to the rabbi's instructions and for being too independent. Deri subsequently submitted a letter of recommendation to the Shas Council of Torah Sages, but announced earlier this week that they convinced him to return and lead the party. He then issued a call of his own for those who have left the party to also come back. And the top vote-getter of the Abayta UD primary, Ayelet Shaked, told IBA's Eli Wogelenter that she thinks that the labor list is atrocious.
I think it's very extreme left radicalist, people who support propaganda against Israel, people who are not support Jewish and Democrat state, and very radical from economic perspective, very social communist list.
In a new corruption scandal, a top official from the Lands Authority and a former Knesset member have been released to 5 days house arrest after being questioned yesterday. The official is suspected of using his position at the authority to sell property for a major profit to a real estate company where the former MK is a senior board member. Several investigators of the National Fraud Squad served a warrant to the Land Authority office to produce documents. In other regional news, Hezbollah chief Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah is warning that his group is ready and prepared for a confrontation in the Galilee and beyond. During an interview broadcast on Lebanon's Al Mayadeen network, the terror boss asserted that if Israelis think that the Hezbollah resistance is weakened or exhausted, or that its capabilities and readiness have been compromised, they are completely deluded and will find that out if they operate on those assumptions. Nasrallah also confirmed that a senior member of his organization has been apprehended for spying on behalf of Israel. This comes weeks after reports in the Lebanese press that a suspect identified as Mohammed Shorba was caught committing espionage for the Jewish state. In the wake of allegations from Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu comparing him to the gunmen who terrorized Paris last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu is once again calling on world leaders to condemn the rhetoric coming from Ankara, saying that if the international community does not condemn those who support terror and fail to stand strongly and clearly against those who fight it, the wave of terror currently sweeping the world will only increase. State Department officials responded to criticism from Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan that Netanyahu had no right to attend the Unity March in Paris this week because he is just like the terrorists.
We certainly believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu's presence in Paris, along with other world leaders, sent a meaningful message of solidarity with the people of France and against acts of terror. As I said yesterday, we disagree with President Erdogan's characterization of the state of Israel. I think those are also some of the comments you're probably referring to. And don't have much more on it than that.
The Israeli Prime Minister tweeted that no world leaders had actually condemned Erdogan for his comments. Is this something that the Secretary or others in the government, let's say, leaders of the government, are going to address soon?
I don't know if any else plan to say publicly, although I know folks certainly share my strong disagreement with those comments.
United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is expressing alarm that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is in a downward spiral of actions and counteractions, and is calling on both sides to not exacerbate existing divisions, and particularly that Israel must immediately resume the transfer of tax revenues to the Palestinian Authority that it withheld after unilateral moves by the Palestinians for statehood recognition and acceptance to the International Criminal Court.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is now entering uncharted territory, which lamentably seems to have dashed any immediate hope for a return to peace talks. We should be under no illusion about the perils that this new chapter may entail. The increasingly antagonistic and virulent nature of the discourse between the two sides should be a cause of serious concern among those seeking to foster an environment conducive to a return to constructive dialogue.
Implementing of the law and ensuring responsibility of the gross human rights violations, breaches of humanitarian law, and war crimes that have been perpetrated, and not punitive measures to exact retribution for a commitment to international law. The focus must be on ending this illegitimate, belligerent, colonial Israeli occupation in all its manifestations and realizing the international consensus for a peaceful solution. We will thus continue to reject all of the irrational arguments against our peaceful, non-violent, political, diplomatic, and legal endeavors, and will continue on this path for justice and peace.
This council dictates what Israel should do and the Palestinians should get. Aside from being deeply biased, you're indulging their delusions. Every nation that voted in favor of the Palestinian one-sided resolution encouraged them to continue what I would describe a diplomatic triathlon, running away from negotiations, placing hurdles on the peace process, and cycling towards protracted conflict.
After acknowledging that the Jewish population in France is facing difficult times, veteran diplomat Avi Posner told IBA's Marko Dukevich that the Israeli government is not yet prepared to cope with a massive wave of immigration from the European nation.
They are passing through a very tough time, and I know that they feel the pressure. They feel the pressure. They have felt the pressure for a long time. But now, after this terrible attack against the kosher supermarket and the 4 dead who were buried in Jerusalem, a lot of French Jews think that maybe their future is not in France, that maybe the problem in France is difficult to solve because there is an immense Muslim minority, maybe 8 to 10% of the population. There is a nice Jewish community, but not the same numbers, and they feel under pressure. So a lot of them think about their future. Some, of course, will like to remain in France. Some will want to come to Israel. Some may want to go to other countries. But something is happening within this community.
Now, many French Jews have fallen victim to anti-Semitic attacks, particularly in the past year. Some claim the French government has not done enough to combat these attacks. Do you agree with that?
We have to be very fair with the French government. The French government has a very firm attitude against anti-Semitism. But maybe they did not take the threat in all its seriousness. Okay. I give you an example, not about this French government. The previous socialist French government, when Chirac was president and Jospin was prime minister. I'm speaking about the early 2000s during the second Intifada, right. Okay? 2000, 2004. Jews came under attack in France. Synagogues were burned. Schools were rampaged. Pupils were attacked, not murdered. It was not a terrorist kind of action like we see today. It was more what I can call the classic anti-Semite attacks against Jews. And then the French government oddly enough, said those are not anti-Semitic actions. These are actions of punks and of delinquents, and they did not want for 3 or 4 years to describe the action against the Jews as anti-Semitic. Now the situation is different. This government, and also the Sarkozy government, but also this government of President Hollande, they speak very forcefully against anti-Semitism. And they want to fight anti-Semitism. The big problem is, can they really achieve results? I mean, this is the big question that the French Jews think. They know that, yeah, the government is friendly, wants to do things. Is it able, when you have so many nests of anti-Semitism, are they able to do really something about it? And here comes the question mark. Should we stay in France or should we leave?
Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu and other Israeli officials have called on French Jews to make Aliyah to Israel at the disdain of the French government. Do you think we'll witness a sharp rise in Aliyah of French Jews to Israel because of the recent events?
Yeah, I think we are going to see a very sharp rise in the Aliyah of Jews. Look, already in 2014, the number has doubled. In 2013, there were 3,500 Jews who made the Aliyah from France, which is also a nice number. In 2014, there were 7,000. And France came on top of the list of Aliyah before the Olim of the ex-Soviet Union. Number 1, France. I can foresee that in 2015, we're going to see between 10 and 15,000 Jews coming here. This is already almost a mass aliyah. And we have to be ready for that. And I'm afraid we are not ready for that. We have to find housing. We have to find jobs, ulpanim, to study Hebrew. Here, I think, okay, the government is now busy with elections. But there are things which are more important than elections. And for example, Aliyah is more important. And successful integration is more important, okay? And I think there should be at the government level somebody who thinks, okay, in the next few months we are going to see many thousands of Jews coming. How are we going to deal with that? This is very important.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel is vowing to protect Jews and Muslims living in her nation from prejudice. After the holding of a minute of silence for the victims of the Paris terrorist attacks, Merkel told the German parliament that a vibrant democracy is the best way to combat the extremist violence that has shaken France. Merkel has come out strongly against the growth of the grassroots anti-Islam movement in Germany, insisting that the nation will not be separated by those who place the Muslim community at large under suspicion because of Islamist terror. Referring to the rise in anti-Semitism, Merkel stressed the importance of Germany's Jewish community, saying that Jewish life belongs with us. Sky News is one of the world's media outlets that is refusing to show the cover page of the latest edition of Charlie Hebdo that bears a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad. Here's what happened when a member of the French newspaper staff was interviewed by the British network.
Much offending to kill in the name of a religion than to answer to a killing by very sweet drawings who put Muhammad outside this crime. So I'm very sad that journalists in UK do not support us, that journalists in UK betray what journalism is about by thinking that people cannot be grown enough to decide if a drawing is offending or not, because you're not even showing it. It's this, which is completely crazy, that in UK you cannot show a simple drawing as that.
So with Mohammed here at Sky News, we've chosen not to show that cover, so we would appreciate, Caroline, not showing that. I do apologise for any of our viewers who may have been offended by that. As you know, here in Sky News, we've taken the editorial decision not to feature the cover of Charlie Hebdo.
Turning now to sports and EuroLeague basketball, with Maccabi Tel Aviv pulling off a key victory in the final 16 stage with a hard-fought 70-68 triumph over perennial powerhouse Barcelona at Nokia Arena last night. Jeremy Pargo scored 20 points to lead the yellow and blue in a close-knit contest throughout. It was the first time that Maccabi has beaten Barcelona after an 8-game losing streak dating back to 2009. Maccabi improved to a 2-1 in the group with the victory, while the Spaniards fell to a disappointing 1-2 mark. In local finance, the shekel today put in a mixed performance in foreign currency trading, and due to the closure of the stock market on Fridays, here's a look at the closing numbers for the week. The IBA weather team tells us to expect occasional showers and isolated thunderstorms this evening and tomorrow morning, although the rain should weaken by afternoon and taper off by tomorrow night. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Aryeh O'Sullivan will be here tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.